Hello, everyone. I hope that you're all well. Thanks very much for coming to see me on my channel on Warren's Team Talk. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Warren, and yeah, I'm sorry about the state of this barn. I really need to get it sorted out. It's an absolute shambles. Yeah, I'm beginning to look a bit like Wurzel Gummidge, to be quite frank, and I can't be having that. Anyway, so like I say, thanks for coming by and checking out what I've got to offer. And what I've got today is I've got brand new, spanking, shiny, super duper new video for you. And this one is the Memories of the Football Terrace podcast, episode 4. And this time it's all the experiences I had and shenanigans I got up to between 1984 and 1987 whilst following Arsenal. And there's a few away games this time as well, so that should be quite interesting. Anyway, so I hope you enjoy that. Memorable bits from that is the 2 games against Tottenham in the League Cup semi-final. What else was there? There's a testimonial game against Celtic at Highbury, which was an absolutely brilliant night. What else? Yeah, anyway, you'll see when it comes on. And yeah, we've got 3 managers during that period as well. We had Don Howe and Steve Burtonshaw, caretaker manager, and then George Graham came in as well. So it should be quite an interesting story. Now, before I move on, I just want to thank you all for watching the videos that I put out, and I hope that you're enjoying them. Please don't forget to put a like on this video. Like the majority you normally do put a big like on it, but please make sure that you continue to do that. Anyone who's new, please, can I ask you to subscribe to the channel, and also make sure that you pass it on to other people, especially if you think that they're going to enjoy watching it, because it all helps. The more people that get to see it, the more that YouTube will send it out to other people to see as well. So it's a bit weird, but that's the way it works. They've got at least like computer-based algorithm, which these are the sorts of things it uses to see which videos to pump out. So if we can get that done, that would be fantastic. And it only takes a second to click on the buttons for like, share and subscribe, and it's not going to cost you anything either. So if you can help me do that, that would be absolutely fantastic. Anyway, but I hope apart from that, I hope that you're all really well and taking care of yourselves, and remembering to share some love and kindness around the world and keep talking to each other. It's really, really helpful. Anyway, take care, all of you, and I hope you enjoy the video. Okay, everyone, so here we go. It's episode 4 of my Arsenal story between 1984 and 1987. Now, before we get started with this, I just want to have a quick word with you all about what happened last weekend at the final of the European Championships, and the racist abuse of Bukayo Saka and Marcus Rashford and Jadon Sancho, I have to say I found it absolutely disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Am I surprised though? No, I'm not. I have to say I'm not. Just because I know what some of these people are like and what absolute lowlifes they are. And I don't want anything to do with these absolute nobbins, to be quite honest with you. So I just feel really, really sorry for Bukayo. He's an Arsenal boy. He's one of our own, as they say, and he's a kid at the end of the day. The boy is 19 years old, and when his country needed him, he stood up and put himself up on the firing line. And he even said he knew what was coming if he missed that penalty. I mean, as if he wasn't under enough pressure as it was. But to go up there and put himself on the line like that, it's testament to him. And that boy, as far as I'm concerned, he's a hero for England, for the United Kingdom, and for everyone. I mean, the man, you know, he turned from a boy into a man, but he's still only 19. And for him to put himself forward like that, it's unbelievable. I just really, really hope that it doesn't ruin him, because that vile, disgusting, evil nonsense that he's had to put up with, no one should have to put up with that, let alone a kid. And it's completely unnecessary. That's the other thing. Yeah, I know there's always going to be racists and lowlifes and idiots around, but you know, the thing is, I have to say, I think the social media companies need to do more. When people sign up for accounts, I think they need to be, the social media companies, they need to be forced to ask people for proof of ID and proof of addresses so that it can be tracked. And the same for those people when you go for a mobile. You shouldn't be able to just go and buy a chip just like that without proving who you are, what your name is, and where you live. Because that's another problem of people bloody doing all these scams. A lot of them are doing it just from mobiles because they can just go and get a chip. I'm sorry, but it's too easy. I just think it's too easy for these scum. So those found, and as well as that, those people who were found guilty of these crimes, they should be educated, have lengthy prison sentences, and banned for life from attending football, and forced to attend at a police station every time that there's a game going on that their team is involved in, if they're known to support a football club. They also should be forced to surrender. And this also, what I'm talking about, is that scum that broke into Wembley Stadium in the final. And one person, I can't remember who it was, I think it was one of the players' families, ended up with broken ribs because of it. And you know, apparently there were kids there crying because they were scared. I mean, what sort of scum does that? And I saw some poor Asian guy getting a right good kicking because he'd fallen over on the ground. I mean, these people, they need to surrender their passports at a police station before all England football matches, and if their clubs are playing in Europe, they should also have to do the same. And also for all international tournaments as well, and they should have to report to police stations on the days of games. And that's if and you know, as well as that, they need educating. They need to go and have lengthy prison sentences as well. And I'd also, what I want to see from my own personal point of view, is the next time the England team play, either it's at home or abroad, that the whole team line up, linking arms, and they walk down the pitch, and the black players in the team are spread out amongst the line, and they pass the ball amongst themselves. And then when it gets, and they march towards their own goal, when it gets to their goal, they score an own goal, and that will show these people that they're not helping the team; they're just making things more difficult. And you know, it's disgusting. And before the tournament even started, you might remember that players were taking the knee and they were getting booed for it, and all this carry on. The Home Secretary coming out and saying that she wasn't in favour of it because it was gesture politics. What a load of old bollocks. That woman should be made to resign. Out. She's a disgrace to this country and an embarrassment. I want her, she either resigns or she's sacked. I would have sacked her long ago with all these indiscretions, like shouting and screaming at people. I know that I'm ranting at the moment, but I'm not shouting and ranting and raving at people who are in my employ, am I? Not that I'm employing anyone, but anyway. So if that happens again and the players get booed or they get negative abuse because of their race or the colour or for taking the knee, the whole team should get up and walk off and refuse to play the game. It's absolutely disgusting. These people that are doing it, they're a disgrace and embarrassment to this country, and they're scum. People in this country fought a world war to defeat those ridiculous ideas, and there's no place for them in this country as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, Bukayo, you're a legend, mate. You carried Arsenal last season. They're an absolute legend, and anything that we can do to support you, mate, we'd love to be able to do it. And we love you, and we're proud of you, and we'll always stand by you. And as the great man Thierry Henry once said, once a Gooner, always a Gooner. And you are a Gooner, son. Right, anyway, so on with the show. I've had my rant, so let's get on. But no, I'm not having it. No. We're starting off with Arsenal between the 1984-85 season. And in the close season that year, Arsenal signed Viv Anderson, and they also from Notts Forest, and Steve Williams also signed for Southampton for £550,000 in December 1984. This was the Arsenal team group picture for the 84-85 season. And as you can see Viv Anderson stood there, and I wasn't really sure that blonde guy was at the back standing next to John Lukic, but apparently some guy by the name of Damien Court, but I never ever actually remember seeing him play. Colin Hill's there as well, Ian Allinson, Stuart Robson, and then obviously Cheeky Charlie, Raphael Mead, and Paul Mariner. Yeah, I did a video, a tribute to Paul Mariner, so make sure you go and check that one out as well. And as you can see in that team group picture is Don Howard's in the manager's seat. So, Anyway, so the first game that I can remember from the 1984-85 season was an absolute thriller played at Vicarage Road, where Arsenal defeated Watford by 4-3. And the goals that day came from Charlie Nicholas, who got brace, Tony Woodcock and Brian Talbot. And on the other side, Watford, David Leary scored an own goal, unfortunately. Mo Johnston got one, and Luther Blissett got one as well. The reason I can remember this game is because it was an incredibly entertaining game. It was a game where Arsenal's game, like I said, came from Charlie, who scored twice, Brian Talbot and Tony Woodcock. And it was such an exciting game that I recorded the highlights of it on a DVD, which I've long since lost. And it was after this game that I believe Arsenal, after this game, I thought Arsenal were going to have a fairly successful season. So, yeah, we'll see how that turns out. And then the next game, Arsenal played Newcastle United 2-0 at home. And that game took place the following Tuesday. Newcastle United, who were managed by Jack Charlton at the time, visited Arsenal, and they had a perfect start to the season. But apparently Arsenal destroyed them at Highbury, and their perfect start to the season came to a crashing end. And the goals that night were scored by Viv Anderson and Brian Talbot. And Brian Talbot scored a brilliant free kick, apparently, in that game. And I heard through my neighbour that she knew someone who'd gone to that game, and she said that Arsenal absolutely ripped Newcastle to pieces. And Newcastle were lucky it was only 2, to be quite honest. That's what she told me anyway. And I remember the media after the game were waxing lyrical about Arsenal's performance that night, and the general consensus of opinion seemed to be that Arsenal could have and should have had scored a lot more goals. So it sort of backed up what my neighbour was telling me. And then the next game, on the 8th of September, Arsenal welcomed Liverpool to Highbury. And this time, Arsenal ran out winners by 3-1. And I was at this game with some friends of mine. We witnessed Arsenal comfortably overpower Liverpool, like I say, by 3-1. I remember in this game that just as he had done in the previous game at home to Newcastle, Brian Talbot scored another brilliant free kick to put Arsenal 1 up just before half-time. And then in the second half, Liverpool players got upset with the manner in which Arsenal scored their second goal because they claimed that Viv Anderson handballed the ball. What happened was that he sped down the right-hand side of Liverpool's defence, and they claimed that he'd handled the ball before crossing the ball into the penalty area, where Arsenal's Tony Woodcock smashed the ball home to give the Gunners a 2-goal lead. Viv Anderson later then broke down Liverpool's left-hand side, and he launched in a cross, which Brian Talbot launched himself at to power in a tremendous header to make it 3-0 to Arsenal. It was, for me, in my opinion, an impressive Arsenal performance. And like I say, they ended up winning the game by 3-1. And this result, coupled with the other results that day, meant that Arsenal went to the top of the First Division table for the first time since February 1973. And I, along with all the other Arsenal supporters at the game, were extremely happy with this result. And I remember there was a lot of singing after the game that finished about Arsenal being top of the league, because I believe the stadium announcer announced the fact over Highbury's PA system that we'd gone top of the table. And when I look back at this, game because I wanted to check that my memory was right before I started talking about it. I even thought I spotted myself in the crowd, but I can't be sure. So, and I'm not really sure where it is. I'm not sure that it's on that image there, but I'm pretty sure that I did see myself. Anyway, so the next game that I went to that year was on the 25th of September when Arsenal entertained Bristol Rovers at Highbury, and Arsenal won by 4-0. And to be honest, it was a very comfortable evening for the Gunners. And I saw that Bristol Rovers side didn't really offer that much. The goals that night came from Viv Anderson, Tony Woodcock, and Charlie grabbed 2 for himself. To be honest, I don't really remember, like I say, Bristol Rovers offering them much in the way of opposition. However, they did manage to keep the score down to 1-0 up until half time. But in the second half, they were soundly beaten. And one of Charlie's goals was something of a rarity for me, as it was a headed goal. And the second one was a beautiful chip from, if I remember correctly, just inside the penalty area. And he logged the Bristol Rovers goalkeeper. The second leg in Bristol ended in a 1-1 draw with Tommy Caton scoring Arsenal's goal. And this meant that Arsenal progressed to the next round by winning the tie 5-1 on aggregate. Then on the 6th of October, Arsenal beat Everton 1-0 at home. Now, the reason I remember this game was because it was a particularly hard-fought and dour encounter, which Arsenal won, thanks to a penalty goal scored by Charlie Nicholas, who was a bit of a penalty-taking expert. And all the chatter after the game was that this was the game that Arsenal would have easily lost in previous seasons, but they seem to be a lot more resilient this year. And it was also an incredibly tense match. And I remember returning home with hardly any voice due to all the singing and shouting that I've been doing whilst standing on the North Bank that afternoon. And during these days, the North Bank at Highbury was certainly no library, as it became in later years, allegedly. Yeah, it certainly wasn't a library when I was on the North Bank. Anyway, that's for sure. Then there was on the 12th of, the 2nd of November, Arsenal went to Manchester United, and they went and played on a Friday night, which was extremely rare and weird in those days because we didn't really get Friday night games at all. In fact, it was the first time I can ever remember Arsenal playing on a Friday night, to be quite frank. And it was live on TV. Because it was screened live on BBC One on a Friday night. And it was in the early days of football matches being shown live on TV, other than the FA Cup final and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, Arsenal lost the game by 4-2 after going 2-1 up through goals from Ian Allinson and Tony Woodcock. And I do remember in this game that it was raining really heavily, and Charlie Nicholas was getting all sorts of abuse from the Man United fans. I think mostly because of the fact that he turned them down in order to come to Arsenal. Then the next game I remember was a game against QPR at Highbury, which Arsenal won by 1-0 on the 17th of November. And the reason I remember this one is because I was standing on the North Bank, and it exercised some demons for Arsenal games for a game which had been played 9 months earlier, when QPR under the management Terry Venables came to Highbury and gave a superb tactical performance to defeat Arsenal by 2-0. And this performance involved Arsenal being caught offside a frustrating amount of times. In November's clash, I remember Arsenal employed the offside trap for themselves, to Arsenal fans' delight, and this led to Arsenal winning the game 1-0, and the Arsenal fans chanting offside, offside at every time that they managed to catch QPR offside. Yeah, because it was really frustrating, to be quite honest. Then on the 29th of December, Arsenal travelled up to Newcastle, and they defeated Newcastle United by 3-1. And I remember watching this game on Match of the Day, and I remember this game mainly because Charlie Nicholas scored twice to help Arsenal to a 3-1 victory. But at this stage of the season, I remember I was beginning to become frustrated with Charlie's inconsistent performances, because when he was good, he was outstanding, but when he was bad, he was really bad. However, to be fair to Charlie, I remember thinking, and I still think this, that Arsenal were not playing to his strengths. And I often felt that he would be asked to receive the ball in the air, and he was a small guy, he was only about 5'10". And had they played the ball into his feet, they would have had far more success with him. But what do I know? I'm not a football coach, am I? And in this game, Brian Talbot scored the other goal for Arsenal. And Peter Beardsley, one of my favourite all-time players who'd never played for Arsenal, scored Newcastle United's other goal from a penalty. And then on the 1st of January 1985, Arsenal played Tottenham Hotspur at Highbury, and this game saw me make my North London derby debut. It was a freezing cold day, and there was dust and snow on the ground when I woke up on New Year's Day. And on the way to the ground, I was thinking, what the hell am I doing? Why am I going to this game? And I did feel quite optimistic, though, about Arsenal's chances, especially after the victory at Newcastle 3 days earlier. Steve Williams made his debut in this game after moving from Southampton in December 1984, and he started on the subs bench and then came on as a substitute for Charlie Nicholas. Tottenham won the game 2-1, but I sadly seem to remember there was some fighting in the clock end, and at the final whistle, I remember seeing Ray Clements jump into the clock end where the Spurs fans were gathered to celebrate with them, which I found extremely annoying. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Ray Clements, to be honest. I never have been. Also in this game, Charlie Nicholas went flying into the enclosure next to the dugouts after an absolutely horrendous tackle by Graham Roberts, which was more like an assault than anything else. And how he was not red carded, I'll never know. And to be quite frank, I'm surprised he wasn't arrested. It was absolutely horrendous. Charlie went about 6 foot up in the air, and like I say, he ended up like over the advertising hoarding and into that enclosure. How the hell anyone who's tackled it can fly through the air like that and end up in the enclosure is just beyond me. It's yeah, I don't know how he wasn't seriously injured, to be quite honest. Anyway. So on the 1st of January 1985, in January 1985, sorry, Arsenal played York City in the fourth round of the FA Cup. And I listened to this game on the radio, and hold on, I'm not really sure what's going on here. Sorry, guys. Just give me a sec. Yeah, I won't be a second. I'm just checking something. Sorry about this. Excuse me. Yeah, there seems to be a bit of a problem with my script prompt. Hold on just a second. I'm sorry. Right. Okay. Yeah. So. Yeah. So basically, yeah, I thought there was going to be something on here about the FA Cup match I wanted to tell you about with York City. Now, Arsenal reached the fourth round of the FA Cup that year, and in that game they play York City at York City's ground. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but the game nearly never went ahead because there was a heavy snowfall overnight, and York City had to pull in loads of volunteers to get the pitch cleared of snow, and the pitch was really icy, and the game was like a really disappointing game. I remember watching it, I think, on Match Today and listening to it on the radio, and it wasn't. It was nothing to write home about. But the thing that was disappointing about it was in the last minute, Arsenal gave away a penalty to York, and Keith Couching stepped up and scored the goal, which knocked Arsenal out of the FA Cup. What I just don't get how players can give away penalties in the last minute of the game. Just don't go diving in. Don't go giving the referee a decision to make. It was just bonkers. Anyway, so they got knocked out. York City were a third division club at the time, and it was hugely embarrassing. And I remember all the jip and taunting that I got at school. It's horrific. Anyway, so at the end of the season, Arsenal had ended up finishing 7th in the first division, about 11 points behind our deadly rivals Tottenham Hotspur, also 10 points behind Manchester United and behind Chelsea on goal difference. And Chelsea at the time, they were dreadful. They were an awful side, but we still managed to finish below them. So it was quite disappointing, really, given how optimistic I was at the start of the season and the players that we had in our squad. And I honestly believe that Arsenal should have done much, much better given the squad of players we had. Anyway, so let's move on and talk about the 1985-86 season. So for the 1985-86 season, Arsenal didn't make any major signings during the pre-season, but it did see Brian Talbot leave Arsenal to join Watford, and Pat Jennings left to return to Tottenham, and Chris White, also known as Huggy Bear, returned from Crystal Palace on loan. But he left again at the end of the season on a free transfer. Now, I had quite mixed feelings about Chris White. I mean, he was a centre back, and sometimes he played really well, sometimes he played really badly, and I never really felt completely confident with him playing as a centre back, I have to say. But the thing about it was, he did sometimes as well play up front as a striker, and he was a right handful because he's a big old boy. And the reason I said he's also known as Huggy Bear was in the late 70s, early 80s, there was a TV program, an American TV program on TV called Starsky and Hutch. And Starsky and Hutch, they used to have this guy on it, a black guy called Huggy Bear, who was a police informant. And why he got the name Huggy Bear, though, I really don't know. I don't think he was a police informant or anything like that. But yeah, I don't know. But I know that Huggy Bear portrayed this character in the TV show. He portrayed a character who was supposed to be really cool. But whether that had anything to do with it, I really don't know. Because I don't know. I'm sure that Chris White was a really cool guy. But anyway, this season also saw a number of youngsters also start to come into the first team. Most notably, David Rocastle made his debut in a 0-0 draw on the 28th September 1985, and Martin Keown, who made his debut in a 0-0 draw with West Bromwich Albion. It also saw Niall Quinn, who scored on his debut for Arsenal's first team against Liverpool on the 14th of December in the game which Arsenal won by 2-0. Martin Hayes made his first team debut against Oxford United on the 16th of November, and then Paul Merson signed a professional contract with Arsenal during this season. I have to be honest, I don't remember a great deal about this season, to be perfectly honest, but I will go through what I can, what I do remember. But this is the Arsenal team group for the 85-86 season. And yeah, you can see Chris White there and Paul Davis and Tony. Is Tony Woodcock still there? Is he? Yeah, he's there. He's at the backs. Charlie's there. Graham Ricks, Stuart Robson, Ian Allinson. Martin Hayes. Oh yeah, Martin Keown. Look at Martin Keown's hair, man. Oh my God, what a hair. Oh my God. What a barnet. He's the one that's second end. He's standing up at the back, second from the left-hand side. And one to the left of the first goalkeeper, you can see there. Oh my God. That's right there. Anyway. So the first game that I can remember was on the 8th of October 1985, which was a League Cup second round, second leg game at home to Hereford United. Arsenal really very nearly suffered a humiliating defeat at the hands of Hereford in the second round of this season's League Cup. In the first leg, played at Hereford's Edgar Street, the game had ended in a 0-0 draw. And to be perfectly honest, I fully expected Arsenal to comfortably win the second leg and move into the third round, given that at the time Hereford were plying their trade in the 4th division. The second leg, though, was anything but a comfortable formality or progression. After 90 minutes at Highbury, the game was deadlocked at 1-1, with Viv Anderson grabbing Arsenal's goal. So the match moved into extra time, and the scores still stood at 1-1 at the end of extra time. Hereford would have won on the away goals rule and knocked Arsenal out of the competition. With this nightmare scenario looming large on the horizon, Charlie Nicholas pounced and grabbed a winning goal to hand Arsenal a 2-1 victory in a game where they played really badly. And it secured Arsenal's passage to the League Cup third round. And then on the 14th of December 1985, as I said earlier, Arsenal entertained Liverpool at Highbury, and a game where they won by 2-0. And I remember laying in the bath listening to this game on the radio. And from the commentary that I heard, it sounded like Niall Quinn, who'd made his debut in this game. And he partnered Charlie Nicholas up front that day in the Arsenal attack. And it sounded like Arsenal, he terrified the Liverpool defence. And in this game, Arsenal's goals came from Charlie Nicholas and Niall Quinn. So that was great, really. The next game was on the 3rd of March, where Arsenal played Luton Town in the 5th round of the FA Cup. And it was, the 5th round, it was a 5th round replay against Luton Town at Highbury. Now, I remember this game because it was played on a Monday night, and also because of Mick Harford. The first game in this cup tie had ended in a 2-2 draw, and in the replay at Highbury, which ended in a 0-0 draw, and I remember the Arsenal fans giving Mick Harford a lot of abuse, because in the first game at Kenilworth Road and in the replay at Highbury, he had continuously been fouling the Arsenal defenders, and how he managed not to be sent off, I'll never know. And then, so because of the fact that the game had ended in a 0-0 draw, the tie moved on to another replay at Luton's Kenilworth Road ground, which Arsenal lost by 3-0. And that meant that they crashed out of the FA Cup for another year. So the next thing I remember about this season was the period between the middle of March, I think it was, March 1985, and the Easter holidays. And to be honest, not to put a too fine a point on it, for me, it was a horrendous period for the club. I mean, not as bad as the first half of this season that's just finished, but it was horrendous nonetheless. It started with Don Howe leaving the club after Arsenal beat Coventry City 3-0. Now, at the time, I can remember that we all believed Don Howe had been sacked by the Arsenal board. But if you look on the internet, it says that he resigned. But that's not how I remember it. And I remember standing on the North Bank and chatting to some lads, and we were all really angry and upset about it, because we were looking at the league table and we had about 2 or 3 games in hand on the league leaders, Everton. And if we'd won those games in hand, we would have ended up being second in the table. So I just didn't really understand it. But anyway, Arsenal appointed Steve Burtonshaw to take over as caretaker manager. And then the first game after his departure from Don Howe's departure from the club was the North London derby at White Hart Lane, which Arsenal lost by 1-0. And then 2 days later, Arsenal had a home game against Watford. And then the very next day after that, they would have another game against Watford at Vicarage Road, both of which were league games. Now, I don't really understand how that could happen and why it had happened like that. I don't know if it was down to fixture congestion and the games had been rearranged, but I can never ever remember before or since ever having 2 games on 2 consecutive days like that. I don't remember much about either of these 2 games, except that, of course, Arsenal lost all 3 of them, all 3 of these games. And John Barnes, I remember, ran the Arsenal defence ragged, especially a game at Highbury. But what I remember about this game was the venomous protest against the Arsenal board from those of us who stood on the North Bank. I can clearly remember chants of sack the board and Donny loves the Arsenal, you don't. And I also remember hearing about a demonstration outside the main entrance of the ground as well. So yeah, and I remember walking past the ground after the game, and I think there was about 150 odd people stood out there. And the police come along with their horses and managed to move people on. Let's just say they used aggressive negotiations to get people moved on. Then the next game was, I remember, was on the 29th of April 1986, when Arsenal defeated Chelsea by 2-0. And I remember this game more for what happened after the game than the actual game itself. The game was a fairly routine and comfortable victory for Arsenal. And I remember Arsenal's second goal, which was scored by Charlie Nicholas, and it was a really, really good goal. What happened was that he was being managed by ex-Aberdonian Doug Ruvie, and a long ball got played out of the Arsenal defence, and Doug Ruvie jumped up to try and header the ball clear, but he missed the ball completely, and it hit him on his shoulder, and the ball bounced off his shoulder and bounced up into the air and into Charlie Nicholas's path, and he volleyed the ball into the far top corner to seal a 2-0 victory for Arsenal. But what I remember most, though, about this game was that after the game, I was just about to leave the North Bank to go home, and I was wearing my half Arsenal and half Celtic, my Arsenal and Celtic half and half hat, and a greasy-haired idiot Chelsea fan, accompanied by 2 gorillas, came up to me and said, "Take that fucking hat off, you fiend scum." And I caught sight of some of the badges that this little shit was wearing on his jacket, which were UVF badges and similar types of badges from paramilitary organisations from the north of Ireland. And I just looked at him and thought, "You pathetic little twat." And I said to him, "Yeah, I'll take it home, but when I get home, mate, and not before." And then I turned my back on him and walked off. And then, as I was walking away from him, I could hear him shouting and screaming more anti-Catholic religious bigotry diatribe at me. And then the next thing I remember, there were 3 burly coppers carting him and his 2 mates off to the meat wagon, as they say. So fair play to them. Don't need little shits like that getting in my face, that's for sure. So yeah, that's all I really remember from that season. So that season again, Arsenal finished 7th, and they as you can see, they didn't really score enough goals, to be quite honest. In fact, they scored 40 less goals than Liverpool did for the whole season, which equates to just under a goal a game less than Liverpool. In summary, the season for me was a failure, and certainly not good enough for the club, with the stature, tradition and history of Arsenal Football Club. on the pitch, the team was simply not scoring enough goals. And particularly when you look at that stat I just gave you, that they scored 40 less goals than the league champions and conceded 10 more. I mean, that's just ridiculous. And they were still, like I say, they were still conceding far too many goals. And no, Charlie Nicholas's performances have improved to the extent that he was the club's leading goal scorer that season with 18 goals in all competitions. He was still incredibly inconsistent. And in fact, he only contributed 10 league goals all season. But as I said before, I do not believe it was totally his fault, as I believed he wasn't being used properly and the club wasn't playing to his strengths. For me, it was obvious that the new incoming manager, whoever it was going to have to make a difficult decision, to make about what to do about Charlie. So during the closed season, speculation, well, as soon as the season ended, speculation started about who the new manager was going to be. And some of the early contenders, as far as I can remember, seemed to be George Graham and Terry Venables and Bobby Robson and Alex Ferguson. Now, Arsenal apparently had contacted Bobby Robson, but he rejected the offer because of what he'd heard about the way that the club had treated Don Howe. But also Bobby Robson was the England manager at the time, and I can't see that he would have left the England manager's job to come and manage Arsenal. Arsenal had also approached Barcelona's head coach, Terry Venable, about the vacant manager's job, but he also turned the job down. And from what I heard at the time, he turned down the chance to manage Arsenal for the same reasons as Bobby Robson had turned the job down. And then there was also rumours, they were apparently also talking to Alex Ferguson at Aberdeen, with the idea being that he would come in as manager and that George Graham would be his number 2. But at this time, Alex Ferguson was preparing to take the Scottish national team to the Mexico World Cup after the death of Jock Stein the previous year. And the reports I'd read and heard stated that because Ferguson wanted to wait until after the World Cup, because Arsenal did not want to wait until then to make an appointment, they decided to press ahead with George Graham. George Graham at the time was manager of Millwall. So George Graham, former player of Arsenal, was appointed as Arsenal manager on the 14th of May 1986. And let's move on now to the 1986-87 season, which is one of my favourite ones, to be quite honest. And Arsenal signings during the closed season were Perry Groves. He joined actually in September 1986. Perry Groves joined Arsenal for £50,000, becoming the first signing of new manager George Graham. Now, he was a massive Arsenal fan, and I like the idea that that clubs should have players who are supporters of the club they're playing from. I just think it's good. It's a good thing for the club. And then Alan Smith joined Arsenal in March 1987, and then he was loaned back to Leicester City for the remainder of the season, because that was where he was playing his football before Arsenal signed him. Now, the thing about Perry Groves, I need to tell you this. Lots of people used to say that I looked like him. And I remember once I was on holiday in Spain and a couple of fellas come up to me in this bar asking me if I was Perry Groves. And I remember I was wearing the original red Adidas top that night, and I was red as a beetroot, and I did have gingery coloured hair at the time as well, and a similar style to him. But I had to deflate their bubble a bit, I suppose. But I suppose really I should have said, yeah, I was, and signed a couple of autographs, had my photograph taken with them. You never know, they might have even bought me a drink. But yeah, and I remember that night when I was out with me and my mate went out, and I was wearing the Arsenal shirt, and we were with a couple of girls that we'd met while we were out there, and some joker decided to throw a pint glass at me, and it just went sailing past my head and smashed on the ground. And I just went to spin round to see what the hell was going on. And this girl that I was with, she just dragged me off down the road. She goes, "Warren, leave it, leave it." So I did what I was told, and off we went. We had a great evening. Let's just leave it like that. Anyway, the players who left Arsenal during the 1986-87 season were Stuart Robson, who left Arsenal to join West Ham United, which I was quite disappointed about because I liked Stuart Robson. Martin Keown left to go with Aston Villa, and in recent years I've heard him say that he felt that it was a move that he regretted and he wished he'd stayed at Arsenal. Tony Woodcock left Arsenal to return to FC Cologne, and Tommy Caton left to go to Oxford United. And Paul Merson went on loan to Brentford, and Michael Thomas went on loan to Portsmouth. Paul Mariner left on a free transfer to join Portsmouth, and Nicky Hammond went on loan to Aberdeen, Peterborough and Bristol Rovers. And finally, Colin Hill ended up going to Maritimo of Portugal. So this is the 1986-87 Arsenal team group, and you can see a very youthful looking Tony Adams at the back there. There's who else is there? Kenny Sansom, and there's Rockies there at the front as well. I think Martin Hayes is there. Graham Ricks, he's looking a bit old in that picture though, to be frank. And then George Graham sat in the middle. He don't look a happy boy, does he? But anyway, so on the 5th of August, 1986, Arsenal played Celtic in Dave O'Leary's testimonial, and it was also George Graham's first game in charge of the Arsenal. Celtic came to Highbury to play David O'Leary's testimonial, and it was an incredible evening. I mean, it's something I don't think I'll ever forget. I decided to go along for the match, and before I left home, I knew that Celtic would bring thousands of supporters with them because of the stories that my dad had told me, that my mate Sandy had told me, and what I'd seen of Celtic supporters and Rangers, to be fair. Wherever they went in Scotland, they would typically turn up at away games. and take over the grounds of the teams that they were playing against, and end up having 3/4 of the ground and effectively turning the match into a home game for themselves. And this game was no different. They turned up at Highbury and they took the place over. They had 3/4 of the ground, and Highbury at the time held 60,000. And they had the whole clock in. They had most of the fans in the East Stand, most of the fans in the West Stand, and there was even quite a large number of them on the North Bank as well, to be quite honest. Anyway, so when I arrived at London at Charing Cross Station, I remember seeing quite a few Celtic fans milling about. And when I went down to the tube station's platform, I was stood waiting for a tube to come in. And when it did come in, the tube was about 3/4 full of Celtic fans who were loud, boisterous and good-humoured. And I think all of the people standing at the platform that I was on, I was the only one who bothered to get on the tube. I was wearing my Celtic shirt and I was also wearing an Arsenal scarf. So that must have been quite a sight. Anyway, the tube I was sitting on was an absolute mess. Nothing was broken or damaged, but I don't think I've ever seen so much mess on a tube train before. There was paper everywhere, empty carrier bags, empty beer cans, and general rubbish just scattered about all over the place. And roughly 1 minute after getting on the tube, what seemed like about 100 police officers turned up on the platform, and just as they did, the doors of the tube train that I was on closed, and it started to pull out of the station. And as it did so, as this happened, all the Celtic fans who were on the tube with me started to hum the Z Cars theme music, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. Those of you who don't know, Z Cars was like a TV police series in the 60s and 70s, and I found it absolutely hilarious. Anyway, after coming out of Arsenal Tube Station, I felt like I'd landed in Glasgow's East End, as there were Celtic fans everywhere. And there was even a group of them marching down the road, like playing a drum and playing flutes and carrying large flags, which I thought was fantastic. One poor Celtic fan saw my Arsenal scarf and said to me, "Arsenal, who the hell are they, by the way?" So I just smiled at him and laughed and replied, "Well, Arsenal are the team that the mighty Celtic have played tonight, mate," which he found really funny and walked off down the road laughing. Next up was my pre-match meal. So I went to the Gunners Chip Bar to get my usual Savanoy chips, and I found the place completely crowded, and it had descended into absolute chaos, because the people serving couldn't understand what the Celtic fans were saying, and the Celtic fans were trying to order things they would expect to find in a fish and chip shop back home in Glasgow. So I thought, I need to step in and help this situation out. And after about 10 minutes, I managed to explain to the Celtic fans that in London, they would not find a chip shop selling the things that they were trying to order. And I also explained to them what things they did have on offer. I also helped the staff understand what the Celtic fans were ordering. And after about 15 or 20 minutes, I managed to resolve the situation. Orders restored, and then everyone went off happy. And I managed to get a free Savoy chips into the bargain, so I was quite happy as well. Anyway, when I got into the North Bank, there were Celtic fans everywhere, and they had the whole of the clock in, most of the West and the East stand, and like I said, there was even some in the North Bank. But there was no trouble. It was fine. It was a great evening. Everyone was in a really good spirits. And I reckon there must have been the attendance was about 30,000. I reckon that there's a good 20-odd thousand Celtic fans at that game. The game itself was a fiercely contested match, and David O'Leary was captaining the Arsenal team for the night, and his younger brother Pierce was captaining the Celtic team. And all throughout the game, former Celtic fans mercilessly taunted Charlie Nicholas, and the game was heading for a 0-0 draw until Celtic scored 2 goals late in the game. In fact, in the last 10 minutes to win the game 2-0. The pick of the goals for me was when Alan McAnally ran almost the full distance the pitch with a powerful run and smashed it past John Lukic. After the game, David O'Leary and his brother Pierce did a lap of honour, and it took them twice as long to get along the clock end. The clock end of the ground at Highbury, as it did for them to get along the 3 other parts of the ground. And I have to say, like I said, it was a great evening and a fitting tribute to a true Arsenal legend. And the Celtic fans were absolutely fantastic, and so were the Arsenal fans, to be fair to them. So the first game of the season that year, Arsenal entertained Manchester United, and it got off to a great start for our new manager. And I remember thinking to myself, I wonder what direction he will take Arsenal in, and I was hoping he would shore up our shaky defence and play a style of football that would get the best out of, obviously, a hugely talented striker, Charlie Nicholas, and help him to become more consistent. Of the youngsters that had started to break into the Arsenal first team, that's the season before, I was happy to see Tony Adams, Niall Quinn, and one of my heroes, David Rocky Rocastle, were handed starts, and summer signing Perry Groves came off the bench to replace Graham Ritz. Arsenal won the game thanks to a goal from Charlie Nicholas, which he scored in front of the North Bank where I was standing. And the celebrations when he scored were literally off the scale. The place just went ballistic. Absolutely mental. And then the next game that I remember, was on the 20th September 1986, and Arsenal drew 0-0 at home with Oxford United. And I remember this game not because of the match, but because of my mate who I went to the match with, and a funny incident involving him to do with Oxford United's Gary Briggs. What happened was that Arsenal were dominating Oxford United all through the game and couldn't just break down their stubborn defence. And central to this was their centre-back, Gary Briggs, who was a very rugged player and as hard as they come. My mate had been complaining about him all through the game because he thought that Gary Briggs was being overly aggressive and that it all spilled over when Oxford were defending the corner, and it was very quiet on the North Bank at that point. And Gary Briggs was just defending the near post, and if I remember correctly, and then all of a sudden, my mate sees his opportunity, and at the top of his voice, he shouted out, I'm not going to use the actual words that the actual word he used, but I'm going to change it a little bit, but you'll be able to work out what he said. He just screamed out at the top of his voice, Briggs, see you next Tuesday. See you next Tuesday. To which Gary Briggs spun around and he started staring up at the North Bank, like in quite a menacing fashion and aggressive fashion. And that for me was the end of it. I just burst out laughing uncontrollably. But thankfully, he didn't jump into the North Bank. He jumped into the North Bank to hunt my mate out, because my mate was a big fella as well. So I think it could have been quite an interesting fight between the two of them. Anyway, so in November, Arsenal defeated Southampton 4-0 in an away game at the Dell. They weren't playing at St Mary's Stadium then, they were playing at their old game, old ground. And then after the match against Nottingham Forest on September 1986, Arsenal lost 1-0. Arsenal went on a 17-game unbeaten run, which ended at Manchester United on the 24th of January, when Arsenal lost 2-0. Now, during this run that Arsenal went on, they ended up on top of the First Division on the 15th of November 1986, after they won 4-0 at Southampton, which is why I mentioned this game just now. And yeah, so you can see the league table there. They were 2 points clear at the top of the table, even though Liverpool had a game in hand on them. And then on the 22nd of November 1986, Arsenal defeated Manchester City by 3-0. Now, I remember this game because it was the game where a young Paul Merson made his debut for Arsenal. And I remember standing on the North Bank with some friends of mine for this game. And Paul Merson came as a substitute for Niall Quinn. At the end of the game, after Arsenal won 3-0, I remember having a heated debate with two of my mates, because I believed that he was going to be a great player for the club, and they seemed to doubt that he would be. So there was a bit of a heated debate going on about that. And then the next game I remember was on the 29th of November, when Arsenal defeated Aston Villa 4-0 at Villa Park. Now, I remember listening to this game on the radio, I think, and then seeing the highlights on TV, and Arsenal were in total control. And in fact, they could have easily scored more. And in fact, Perry Groves had a perfectly good goal disallowed, in my opinion, because apparently Martin Hayes was stood in an offside position. But for me, the pick of Arsenal's goals that day was from Rocky Rocastle, when he cut in from the right-hand side, beat a couple of Southampton players to Villa players to fire in the far bottom corner. I also remember just before this game, or just after this game, George Graham being interviewed on TV, and I have a feeling it was on Football Focus, but I might be wrong. And the interviewer was trying to compare him to Brian Clough. And I seem to remember him saying, look, I've won nothing yet. And Brian Clough is a far cleverer man than me, which I found quite amusing. And to be honest, it was an act of genius in itself, purely because the Arsenal fans were starting to get carried away with the success the club was having. So it was obviously his way of trying to calm things down and rein in people's expectations. If it was just Arsenal fans who were getting carried away, I can remember it wasn't just Arsenal fans who were getting carried away. I remember other team supporters coming up to me and talking to me about this Arsenal team being all conquering. And although I was excited about it, I didn't want to get carried away and then see my hopes blow up in my face. I would say, yes, it's great, but let's just wait and see what happens and things like that. And then on the 13th of December, I remember Arsenal played Norwich City at Carrow Road. Now, I remember this game because I went to this match with my good friend Mick, who's a massive Norwich City fan. And before the game, I remember that we went to a great bar by the river in central Norwich. And we had a nice spot of lunch and a couple of drinks. And then we went off to the game. And on arrival at the ground, he went obviously off to the home end and I went into the away end. And the game was a hard-fought encounter, which I felt that we just about had the better of. And after the game, Mick admitted that he thought we would probably deserve to win the game. Now, our goal was an absolute madness and mired in controversy. Basically, Arsenal won a penalty, and the awarding of the penalty was not what caused the controversy. What caused the controversy was the actual taking of the penalty. Basically, Martin Hayes stepped up and had his first penalty saved, I believe. And then for some reason, and I'm not sure why, the referee ordered that the penalty be retaken. And to this day, I still have no idea why he demanded that the penalty be retaken. I don't know if it was for encroachment or because he felt the goalkeeper had moved or what it was. But anyway, he asked for the penalty to be retaken. And this time, Martin Hayes scored his penalty. Yeah, so Arsenal and Norwich ended up drawing the game. And before that incident and after that incident, I've never ever seen that happen either before or since. And like I say, Martin Hayes scored his penalty and we managed to win a hard point. So then the next game was on the 4th of January against Tottenham at White Hart Lane. And this was the first of 4 successive 2-1 victories for Arsenal at White Hart Lane. And it was screened live on BBC TV. Arsenal, before the game, was sitting proudly at the top of the league. And we powered into a 2-0 lead before half-time. And in the second half, Tottenham threw everything they had at Arsenal in an attempt to get back into the game. And it included the kitchen sink as well. Anyway, they managed to pull 1 goal back. But after this, Arsenal held firm and won the game, like I say, by 2-1. This game marked the last game in Arsenal's unbeaten run that season. Unfortunately, this time, when Arsenal defeated Tottenham, the next game usually would end up in Arsenal putting in a poor performance, and either by drawing or losing the next match. And this game was no exception. And after this game, though, Arsenal would not win again in the league until they played Charlton Athletic at Highbury on the 11th of April. So it was quite a long time before they won another game. Anyway, so the next game I went to was on the 10th of January 1987 at Reading in the FA Cup, third round. And I got my ticket through the Arsenal Travel Club, which I joined. And when I joined, I got told by some numpty in the office who processed my paperwork that he thought I looked like Graham Kelly, the FA secretary at the time. Cheeky bastard. And anyway, the Arsenal Travel Club laid on a special train to take us Arsenal supporters to Reading railway station. And when we arrived at the Reading railway station, we were met by the local constabulary who escorted us to the ground, which was nice of them. It really was. But what was not so nice was the assortment of hungry and rabid looking dogs that they had with them, which were a major, for me, they were a major concern because they looked like they hadn't been fed in weeks, to be quite honest. And I was getting concerned about, the fact they would seem to be frothing at the mouth and, and they were getting a bit excitable. Anyway, the game itself was a fairly comfortable one for Arsenal, except for a mad-arse linesman who seemed delighting in putting up his flag every time that Arsenal attacked. And this happened with annoying regularity. Several of us who were packed in to the away end, and when I say packed in, I mean literally we were packed in like sardines. We spotted TV celebrity Lofty from EastEnders seated in the stand. And on one occasion, when this crazy linesman gave a decision in favour of Arsenal, Lofty, with the mates that he was with, stood up and started sarcastically applauding the linesman. And this brought a chorus of cheers and chants of Lofty is a gooner and Lofty give us a wave from us in the away end, and which he duly did. Sadly though, the game was also marred by some crowd trouble in the Terrace Inn at the opposite end of the ground to where we were stood. And I've since heard reports that some CS gas canisters were thrown, but I have no idea if it's true or not. Anyway, Arsenal won the game by 3-1. Charlie Nicholas got 2 of them and Martin Hayes scored a penalty. Now, the next game was when Arsenal defeated Nottingham Forest 2-0. This game, as far as I can remember, was played on a very foggy night, and Arsenal went in to an early 2-goal lead thanks to 2 goals from Charlie Nicholas and Martin Hayes. And after this, the game really, to be honest, was a dour non-event as far as I can remember. But it was enough to see Arsenal progress to a semi-final clash with our bitter rivals, Tottenham Hotspur. And as I said, that game was played on the 21st of January. Then 10 days later, on the 31st of January, Arsenal entertained Plymouth Argyle at Highbury. Now, I remember turning up at Highbury for this game to find the place swamped with Plymouth Argyle fans. And when I got into this ground, I discovered that they'd been given the whole of the clock end, which meant that they must have had at least 15,000 fans at the game, if not more. And they certainly made themselves heard, that's for sure. And they were a credit to their club. I think loud and proud best describes the way they were. So I don't know what it is about teams wearing green coming to Arsenal and wanting to take the place over. I really don't. But anyway, it was a great day out for them, but sadly low for the Argyle. Arsenal were on top form on that day, and they ran out comfortable 6-1 winners, with the pick of Arsenal's goals for me coming, in my opinion, from Rocky Rocastle. Now, on the 8th of February, 1987, Arsenal and Tottenham played the first leg of the League Cup semi-final at Highbury. This game came in the middle of an extremely poor run of form for Arsenal, and their only victories since the beginning of January had come in cup matches. And I remember going into this game and being incredibly nervous, and although we'd played okay, it wasn't a great performance, and Tottenham took a big advantage for the second leg when they won by 1-0. And I have to be honest, I was dreading going into work and facing my mate Chopper, because I knew that he was going to make my life a misery. Anyway, I have to say, however, that Tottenham's goal should not have stood, because there were at least 2 Tottenham players who were stood in offside positions. But the goal was given, and that is ancient history now, as they say. So, yeah. Then on the 25th February 1987, I went up to Oxford to see Arsenal play against Oxford United. And to be quite honest, I wish I hadn't bothered. It was a dreadful game, which in all honesty, Arsenal should have won fairly comfortably. But the Gunners just didn't seem to have any cutting edge up front. When they got into the final third, all their attacks just seemed to melt away. In particular, Charlie Nicholas had a poor game. And I do remember he suffered a heavy challenge on the far side of the pitch, if I remember correctly. And he also seemed to be getting a lot of abuse from his own supporters, which I found a bit mad. You know, if you're going to go to a game, no matter what you think about the players on duty, you leave that outside and get behind the team for the 90 minutes. Anyway, the game ended in a 0-0 draw. And to be honest, although I was disappointed that we had won the game, I just wanted to get home and forget about the match as soon as possible. Anyway, so on the 1st of March, it was the League Cup semi-final second leg, and Arsenal went into this game with their backs against the wall, because they were 1-0 down from the first leg at Highbury. and they were firm underdogs, and they became even further so when Tottenham went into a 1-0 lead thanks to another goal from Clive Allen, and Arsenal's hopes of reaching the League Cup finals seemed to be completely gone out. Things have completely gone out of the window. And then suddenly the game changed, and this apparently it happened at half time. I'm not really sure that I'm not really sure it happened like that. But anyway, apparently they reckon the stadium announcer at half time put the Spurs song on. Spurs are on their way to Wembley. And in the second half, Arsenal turned the game around and won the game by 2-1. And it took the game to a replay, which was played 3 days later. There was a toss of a coin to decide the venue for the replay. And the story that I heard was that George Graham won the toss, and he asked for the game to be played at White Hart Lane, which I found a bit mad, to be quite honest with you, but who am I to argue with George Graham? Anyway, 3 days later, as I said, Arsenal and Tottenham played the League Cup semi-final, second leg replay. The replay came, and my proud record of never seeing Arsenal lose at White Hart Lane started. But it didn't look like it would work out that way for a long time, especially after Clive Allen gave Tottenham a lead yet again for the third time in the tie. Then 10 minutes before the end of the replay, Charlie Nicholas got quite badly injured and had to be carried off. And Ian Allinson came on to replace him. And then the next thing that happened was that the Tottenham PA announcer came over the tannoy to inform the Spurs fans how they could get their tickets for Wembley, which I understand infuriated the Arsenal players, and it sort of bucked them up, and they thought, right, we'll show them. And then shortly before the end of the game, Ian Allinson equalised for Arsenal, and the Arsenal fans were rocking, and it was an incredible atmosphere at White Hart Lane, and the best I can ever remember I've ever experienced an Arsenal match. And I remember Charlie Nicholas saying of the atmosphere that night, it was the closest he'd heard to an Old Firm derby since he'd moved down to England. And having been fortunate enough to go to a few Old Firm derby matches, I have to say that I agree with him. It wasn't at that level, but it was quite close. And then with the game heading into extra time, David O'Leary took a free kick just inside the Arsenal half, which went to Ian Allinson on the left-hand side of the Tottenham penalty area. And he attempted a shot which was deflected clear, and Rocky Rocastle ran into the penalty area, and after taking control of the loose ball, and he slipped the ball under the advancing Tottenham keeper to put Arsenal 2-1 up, and the roof came off in the away end. It really did. The place was going absolutely potty. And after this, I remember singing and dancing all my way home and walking down the Tottenham High Road and into the tube station. And yeah, what an evening that was. Then on the 10th of March, Arsenal lost 1-0 at home to Liverpool. And to be honest, this was a Liverpool masterclass in every sense of the word. I was stood on the North Bank for this game and I felt so confident. I felt really confident for some reason before the game, despite our poor league form at that time. And Liverpool came and they soaked up everything that Arsenal could throw at them. And literally, I think with their only attack of the game, Ian Rush pounced to give Liverpool a 1-0 win, which was so annoying. But this was why they were champions and the best at that time. Then on the 14th of March, in the FA Cup 6th round, Arsenal lost 3-1 at home to Watford. Now, I remember being angry as I can remember after this game with the referee, who I believed had an absolute terrible game. It all went wrong, in my opinion, when the game was poised at 1-1. And if I remember correctly, Arsenal were denied a clear penalty. And with Arsenal players surrounding the officials en masse, Watford carried on, and why shouldn't they? They broke forward and scored to go 2-1 up, which meant that Arsenal threw everything. They had to throw everything at Watford to get themselves back in the game. Watford then broke away again and scored again to seal a 3-1 victory to knock Arsenal out of the FA Cup for another season. And I was absolutely fuming, not with Watford because they hadn't done anything wrong, but with the match fixtures. I just couldn't believe their incompetence. Then we had the League Cup final on the 5th of April. And the weekend of this game started really well for me, to be quite honest. I passed my driving test on the Friday. And then after that, I went up to Scotland to visit my good friend Sandy. And we went to watch the mighty Celtic defeat Rangers 3-1 at Celtic Park. And then that night, I travelled back overnight. Travelled back down from Dunfermline to London. I left my luggage in the lift luggage department at Charing Cross Station in London and went off to the match. Now, the League Cup final between Arsenal and Liverpool was incredible for me, because after enduring the pain and disappointment of seeing Arsenal lose to West Ham United in the FA Cup final 7 years earlier, this would be the perfect antidote for me to that awful day. But the game started poorly for Arsenal, and in the 23rd minute, Liverpool took the lead through Ian Rush, and up until this game, every time that Ian Rush scored, Liverpool never lost. And this led to all sorts of negative thoughts going through my head. Oh, that's it, we're done, we're finished, we ain't going to win now. And then just 7 minutes later, Arsenal were level when Charlie Nicholas pounced in the penalty area to equalise for Arsenal. And the game then went on, and to be honest, it's a bit of a blur to me. But before Charlie Nicholas had scored the equaliser, Kenny Sansom had taken it upon himself to drive forward to try and act as an example to the rest of his teammates and apparently it inspired his teammates. And then 7 minutes before the end, Charlie Nicholas pounced again to give Arsenal victory and end Ian Rush's proud record and give Arsenal their first major trophy since 1979. And to say I was delighted was an understatement. What a day, what a weekend, and I was shattered. So then 3 days later, I went over to see Arsenal play West Ham at Upton Park. Now, this didn't go so well. After winning the League Cup, like I say, 3 days later, Arsenal were back in action again. And we travelled to Upton Park to face London rivals West Ham. And all I can remember about this game, to be honest, was Liam Brady, who had returned from Italy and signed for West Ham, scored a beautiful goal against us from the left-hand side of the Arsenal penalty area. And the other thing I remember is the absolute chaos that I endured trying to get home from Upton Park. I finally got home about 1:30 a.m. And after this, I vowed never to go to Upton Park again. Then on the 20th of April 1987, Arsenal defeated Leicester City by 4-1. Now, I remember this game because it was Alan Smith's first appearance at Highbury after he had signed for Arsenal, and he'd been loaned back to Leicester for the remainder of the season. And to be honest, this is all I can really remember, is him being waving to the crowd and in the reception he got and so on and so forth. But other than that, I really can't remember anything about it. And then the last day of the season, on the 9th of May, Arsenal entertained Norwich City, but lost 2-1 to the Canaries. Now, like I say, I don't really remember much about this game, except for I went to the game again with my buddy, Mick, who's a massive Norwich fan. And I have to be honest, Norwich completely deserved their victory, and they won the game fair and square as far as I can say. And as we had for this game earlier in the season, we went to the game together, and before the game we went our separate ways. He went off to the away end and I went into the North Bank. And like I say, they thoroughly deserved their victory. Now, this season saw a massive improvement in Arsenal's performance. They finished 4th, just 1 point behind our beaten rivals, Tottenham Hotspur, which was annoying because finishing behind them is always annoying. But we had good reasons to be optimistic for the next season. And I have to say, especially for you, Terry, there was no talk of processes or the manager needing a pre-season, of him needing his own players. And George had turned up and won a trophy in his first season, and without all this other nonsense that we've had to put up with Mikel Arteta. So yeah, it was a great season really, and showed a lot of promise for the next season. Right, okay everyone, well that's it. That's the end of my video for this week. I hope you enjoyed it and you enjoyed finding out about all my shenanigans and whatnot whilst watching Arsenal between 1984 and 1987. Finding out about the fantastic League Cup triumph at Wembley Stadium against Liverpool, and the epic semi-final encounter with Tottenham at White Hart Lane, and the game at Reading, and yeah, it was quite a season. It really was. Anyway, well, it's quite 3 seasons, sorry. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. And please remember, don't forget to like the video, share it, subscribe. That would be really, really helpful. It will really help me to get this thing moving. And also, please, more importantly than any of those things, as I always say, please make sure you spread some love and kindness around the world. Be good to each other, look out for each other. And also remember, if you, like I said last time, if you're looking for a channel where you can watch debates about football and you don't mind things getting a bit heated, make sure you go and check out the Claude and the Bansta's channel. The two lads who run it are absolutely fantastic, Terry and Diesel, and it frequently ends into a bit of a shouting match and gets really heated. So, but yeah, it's excellent. It's a really, really good channel, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Anyway, so that's it, like I say, for this week. Hopefully next Saturday I'll be putting another one out. Don't ask me what it's going to be yet. I haven't made my mind up, but we'll see. Anyway, so if I don't speak to you before then, take care, and I look forward to speaking to you the next time. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.